Hey guys, it's lividfray. Hope you're all doing well today. Today I have a Predator's Mark Explain video for you. We're going to take a look at the Predator's Mark gear set. This was the most highly requested gear set in a recent poll that I did in my community section. I've done Striker and Tactician already, so I will leave the playlist for these down below so you can go and check those out if you'd like more information about Strikers or Tactician or any of the future gear sets that I'll be covering here pretty soon. And as you guys can probably already tell, the format for this video is going to be a little bit different. The other ones were very formal, and I had a script in front of me and everything because I really wanted to get into depth on the gear set and explain certain aspects of it, but really Predator's Mark is really easy to understand and explain. So I'm going to be pretty relaxed. I don't have any kind of script in front of me. I'm just hitting record and I'm going to show you what the gear set's bonuses do. So let's go ahead and jump right into the set bonuses for this gear set, starting with the two-piece. The two-piece is going to give you 10% extra reload speed. In my opinion, this definitely could have been a lot better. I think that 20% more reload speed would have been a better jumping off point, but it's really not that bad. I can't say that you really notice it too much, but if you do have reload speed on your weapon attachments, you could actually benefit very well from this. I don't think that you should have to sacrifice your weapon attachments though for reload speed, but getting 10% more is definitely better than nothing. So it's the three-piece where this gear set really starts to shine, which is additional assault rifle and SMG damage by 8%. This 8% pairs very well with gear sets like Banshee, where you get a 10% out of cover damage. A lot of people like to run Predshi in the dark zone against other players. You can also run it with gear sets like Alpha, so you don't have to sacrifice your stat requirements. Not only 5% additional flat damage, but you'll be able to unlock any of the gun talents, so you could run additional gun talents to make your build do more damage. So yeah, you definitely gain the effects and value of Predator just with the three-piece alone. But if you move away from the three-piece and you get into a four-piece, when you hit 10 shots without switching targets, you're going to make the target bleed for 50% of the damage already done by those bullets. Now the four-piece set bonus for Predator is really strong. Essentially, if you hit 10 shots without switching the target, you're going to make the same target bleed for half of the damage already done by those bullets. So the bleed that happens afterwards is in like 1 or 2 second intervals. And if you do, I mean, it kind of depends on how your build is put together, but if you do have high base damage, this four-piece bonus by itself is going to be pretty good. And usually, if this happens, if you're fighting other players, they think that you have a six-piece right away, and sometimes they just waste a medkit immediately. So it can be in your favor to run the four-piece, but it's definitely not as strong as a six-piece. But if we do hop into the five-piece bonus, you'll see that you're going to have the additional 10% reload speed, which in my opinion, this should have been like, again, 20%. So I think the set overall should have had at least, I would say 30 to 40% reload speed. But that's okay, 10% for a flat total of 20% extra reload speed. 20% is definitely more noticeable than 10. And you also get that additional 8% AR and SMG damage. So altogether, with this set, you are benefiting 16% flat base damage for the AR and the SMGs. So this is really strong to use with the house, obviously with lightweight M4s, but we'll get more into the weapons here in just a second. Now the six-piece is what makes this gear set extremely strong. The bonus is still the same. When you hit 10 shots without switching targets, they're going to bleed for half of the damage done by those bullets. But what changes now with the six-piece is that the damage over time to the same target is increased by 15% for every 3,000 stamina, and it can now do critical hits. Now when it comes to a six-piece classified Predator, if you are going to run this, do not run anything less than 9k. It doesn't matter if you have to sacrifice some of the major or minor attributes. As long as you make sure that all of the stats are rolled towards stamina, this build is going to hit hard no matter what you do. The reason for that is because once you hit 9,000 stamina, the damage over time bonus is increased by 120%. Predator's Mark ignores status effect immunity of NPCs. Now if you're running this against other players, you can stack exotic damage resilience along with bleed resistance on your gear, and you will somewhat minimize the effect of Predator, but Predator's is still extremely strong. So if you get hit by bleed by other players and you don't do something about it, like using a medkit or your station, this will kill you. Obviously, if their build is put together poorly, if they're not running 9k, you might be able to survive it. But if you are getting hit by a person's Predator build with the house or, whatever they have, and you don't do something against it, this will take the majority of your health and leave you one shot, or it will kill you. It's also important to note that Predators is bugged out with the stations. You can't just sit inside your station and avoid the Predator bleed. If you are within the station and you are put under the effects of bleed, you have to run out of your station and run back in. They never fixed it. It's still something that you have to deal with, unfortunately. And there are other ways that you can kind of combat Predator, but we'll go over that later when I get into the PvP way to make the build. Before I get into the actual gear, I'm going to go ahead and talk about the guns and the gun talents and attachments and everything. You can use this with a lightweight M4 if you'd like to. I always recommend an assault rifle just because you're going to have that increased enemy armor damage. It does wonders with Predator. They kind of go hand in hand, to be honest, and obviously this gives you that 16% more damage anyway. But when it comes to Predator, you definitely want guns that have higher base damage. So in my opinion, the AK-47 classes are the absolute best guns to use because they have the highest base damage. Yes, the RPM is slower, but they are also much easier to control. So you're going to be landing the majority of your shots, therefore you're going to be doing more damage with the actual Predator bleed ticks at the end of your 10-shot streak. So my AK-47 has Predatory, Destructive, and Deadly. Instead of Deadly, you could do Brutal here if you'd like to, mainly because the headshots that you land are going to do more damage, so you're going to receive more bleed from that. But Deadly still works incredibly well. I used to run Vicious Deadly. That also works very well. In my opinion, Destructive is a must-have, obviously for PvE, just because pretty much every enemy that you go against is going to have some kind of armor value. You want to be able to chew through that as much as possible. Predatory just helps with some sustainability. I am currently kind of theory testing Self-Preserved. I think that Self-Preserved does have a lot of value, but you have to have a really strong pulse on your team or else it doesn't make any sense. If you just run the pulse by yourself, you obviously have no skill power, so your pulse is really weak. So not only are you not getting as much critical hits, but you won't really be able to gain the effects of it over Predatory. But as it sits, Predatory is very strong to use. But if you do have a high pulse on your team, I'm theorizing that Self-Preserved could do a lot of benefit because 3% of the crits that you deal on top of the Shrapnel ability talent, which we're going to go over later, you could get more value from Self-Preserved than Predatory potentially. But since I am still crafting, kind of theory crafting this, I will let you guys know what I come up with later. I'll probably do a different video showcasing that. Another gun that's really good to use, which a lot of you guys probably already know about, is the Urban MDR. I don't recommend using the Urban for all enemy types. I really only recommend using this on heavies or pretty much any kind of tanky legendary mission NPC, because you obviously want to be able to benefit from the bleed afterwards. If you use this on any kind of challenging mission NPC or like a red NPC, you're probably going to kill them with the Urban MDR before the bleed actually procs. So would definitely only recommend the Urban if you use a flashbang on a heavy, for example, or a medic. Trying to eliminate the medic as soon as possible is always a priority, but other than that, you definitely don't want the Urban to be your primary weapon. I use this as a secondary, but even then I sometimes just take it off completely for a different assault rifle, or even the house if I'm looking for something close quarter. Alright, so now we're gonna get into the gear. Again, this is PvE based, we'll go into PvP a little bit later, but you obviously want enemy armor damage rolled everywhere possible. On the chest piece, I have health here, but you could do something like skill haste or health on kill if you want to. I just like to have a little bit more health on me, so I've decided to go with health here. Ammo capacity is pretty recommended for this build, but my backpack doesn't have it, so it's really up to you. And as far as the mods, all of my mods, with the exception of one stamina mod, are firearms with critical hit chance. You could replace these with damage to elite mods if you want to. I just think that since I'm going against different enemy archetypes of reds, purples, and yellows, I think that I would benefit more from just critical hit across the board, and then I wouldn't have to like change my mods all the time. So critical hit chance are good. You could also do damage to elites. Damage to elites is also very, very good. That's kind of however you want to play it. I've just decided to do crit. It's probably not the best way to run it, but it's the way I've decided to do it. Of course, all of the gear is going to be rolled to stamina, so you're going to see stamina rolls on all of the pieces. I've chose enemy armor damage and damage to elites. For the knee pads, I have damage to elites as well. Increased kill XP is, I could probably roll this off, but it really doesn't matter all that much. But for the major attributes on the knee pads and the backpack, you definitely want critical hit damage. You want to stack up as much critical hit damage as you can. Since I actually recorded this video, I've since changed my performance mods, so all of them are going to be like pulse, critical hit chance, and damage, and then I have one random self-heal mod for some reason. I have changed these over to a sticky bomb explosion radius mod. The main reason for that is because I think it's the most versatile. I'll usually switch over to a flashbang when I'm in a group. I don't usually run the the pulse unless I'm solo, and if I do run the pulse, I don't think that the mods are going to make a very big difference. So really for the performance mods, it's really personal preference. I do like to run pulse when I'm solo, so you could run pulse while you're solo, or pulse mods rather, and then if you're in a group, you could switch over to the radius mods like I did, or you can just keep the pulse ones on. It's really not a big deal. Your build is going to hit pretty strong either way. And the backpack has disrupt resistance. Ideally you would want ammo capacity, but disrupt is pretty good too. Critical hit damage, again I have pulse mods on here, but you can change these, and here's my 1 stamina mod with critical hit chance. For the gloves I have enemy armor damage, critical hit damage, AR damage, and stamina. No mod of course, 4% critical hit chance on the bullet, optimized 1401 on all the stats. But in general, this is going to be the PvE build. Heading over to the character screen, you'll see I have 14.5 critical hit chance. This really is not that strong, but if I do get a really strong pulse on my team, if someone's using Reclaimer with a pulse or whatever, this is going to skyrocket up higher. You can also use different talents that can benefit you more with your crit, which I'll get into in just a second. Critical hit damage is 136. This is really, really good. You can see our reload speed bonus is 24.5%. The random number is probably coming from a magazine of some sort. We do have 28% damage to elites. This would be much higher if we're running damage to elite mods, but I decided not to. You could also increase this by 10% by using Ferocious on the bottom slot, which I chose not to. And we have a 57% enemy armor damage number. This is actually really good. The threat, it is recommended, honestly, to use suppressors. I just think the suppressors on the AKs don't sound very good, and the loud vet break sounds more crispy. So, although you do have a lot of stamina, you would actually be surprised at how quickly you go down with this build. It's because you don't have any kind of sustainability. So that's why using talents such as Predatory, Sustained, or Self-Preserved will help you stay alive a little bit longer. So if we leave that and we come over here to the Abilities tab and we check out these skills, there's a couple different options that you have here. The booster shot is really good because it's going to give you that extra 10% damage output. You're going to do some more damage as well as getting some damage resistance, which is much needed. The flashbang is very, very good. It's going to keep those enemies stationary while you do your damage. There's 2 different pulses I would recommend is the Recon. The Recon is going to have more critical hit chance and damage and a lower cooldown, so you could use the Recon to keep your crit up as much as possible. The other option that works really well, obviously, is the Tactical Scanner. You're going to do more base damage, which I think is very beneficial with Predator, because it goes off of the damage done by the bullets, so 10% extra base damage is pretty good, but you're obviously not going to have it as often. It does have a longer cooldown. So leaving that and coming over to the talents. The first one that I'd like to go over really quickly is Adrenaline. This helps if you're going against Predator. So let's say you have a couple people on the other team that are using Predator and you pop a med kit. Adrenaline is going to give you that 7 seconds of immunity, so you cannot be put under the effects of Predator Bleed again for 7 seconds. So I would highly recommend using Adrenaline against Predator users. The next ones are all going to be PvE related. The first one being Shrapnel. Shrapnel is an absolute must-have. You have to have Shrapnel on if you're using this build. It gives you way too much of a benefit to not use it. You're going to have a 30% chance per each target in a 10-meter radius to spread that bleed to other targets. So you could have the chance to do more of a crowd control amount of damage to all of the enemies within a 10-meter radius. And the rest of you guys, you know that I like Strike Back. I never take Strike Back off my builds. I have it on all of them. You don't have to run this. You could do something like On the Move if you want to, or Precision. Precision is also really good to use, but I don't have it on here. One is None is also another honorable mention, because if you're landing as many headshots as possible, you're going to save yourself some ammo. The other talent that I have on here is Combat Medic. I didn't used to run this, but now that I'm running with more community members, I like to have Combat Medic on. I'm starting to do the incursions a lot more, and there are incursions that really depend on Combat Medic, such as Clear Sky or even Stolen Signal. This helps when you guys are trying to do flawless stuff. Hit a med kit for each other. Use Combat Medic. It's definitely recommended. The next one I recommend is Steady Hands. Whenever you enter cover, you're going to reduce your recoil by 25%. You can also leave the cover, and you'll still benefit from Steady Hands for the 10-second duration. So I would definitely recommend Steady Hands. It's a very, very useful talent to be using for Predator. So that is pretty much it for the talents. I'll go ahead and quickly go over how you can build this for PvP instead. For starters, you can use the basic talents that are really beneficial in PvP, such as Vicious, Unforgiving, Deadly, Responsive. All of those do really well. Obviously, Responsive would have to be on the bottom of your weapons, so if you're using an M4, since it does require high firearms, you would not be able to use it on a 9k stamina build unless it's on the bottom slot. But Vicious, Deadly are very, very good. Competent is also really good to use because it's going to increase your base damage. But Vicious and Unforgiving, I would say, are must-haves on the build somewhere. Doesn't really matter where, as long as you have the talents unlocked. As far as your weapon attachments, I would say it's the same exact thing. Just keep critical hit absolutely everywhere possible. Critical hit chance and damage is very important. As far as the attributes, you definitely want health over something like skill haste or health on kill. You definitely want to stack up health. I would even argue that you could remove critical hit damage from your backpack and do health instead, as well as the knee pads. That's definitely your preference, but for these major attributes, you definitely want things that's more related towards, I would say, exotic damage or skill haste. As far as the major attributes on the chest piece, I would definitely do health and skill haste. Skill haste is going to let you get your pulses and your booster shots back faster. You could also do health on kill if you want to, but definitely make sure that you have health here. For the mask, instead of enemy armor damage, I would obviously do critical hit chance. It's an extra 4%. It's going to be very beneficial. For the mods, I would keep them exactly the same. Keep critical hit chance everywhere you can. For the knee pads, instead of damage to elites and increased kill XP, you could do disrupt and shock resistance instead. Increased kill XP though can give you some more Dark Zone rank if you wanted to do that, but I would definitely say take off damage to elites and have shock resistance or something down here. Again, you can keep critical hit damage if you would like to. It's obviously going to let you do more damage, but I would say that health is going to heavily benefit you in the Dark Zone as well, so I'll leave that up to you. You could also just take off your critical hit chance mods and stack up health mods instead. That's also a good substitute. For the backpack, same thing. I would say that if you're running this build solo, or if nobody else in your team has a pulse, to run the pulse, use the concealed. I would honestly always use concealed pulse in the Dark Zone, but it's been a long time since I've engaged in PvP. That may have changed. For the gloves, critical hit chance damage instead of enemy armor, and then do SMG or AR depending on which one you're using. For the holster, do critical hit chance. Really nothing here is different. So really you don't have to change too much to keep Predator good for PvP versus PvE. It's just the main difference is enemy armor damage versus critical hit chance or damage. That pretty much sums up Predator's Mark as a whole. Hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. I would definitely recommend building a Predator build for PvE if you don't have one or if you've never tried it. It is very, very strong against the NPCs. I love to use Predator in legendary missions, so I'm using it quite frequently. You'll see me on streams whenever I matchmake randomly for legendaries, or if I'm playing with some of my friends from the community server, you'll notice that I'm using Predator quite a bit because it is very, very strong. One thing that I haven't mentioned is that you probably shouldn't use this if there is a tactician on your team running the cluster mines, because obviously they're putting bleed on the targets. Your bleed is not going to affect them while they are already on the bleed status effect. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for today's video. I really hope that you guys found this one helpful, and please let me know what you guys want to see next as far as the gear sets explained. I have had quite a few requests for different gear sets, so make sure to put yours down below and it could be featured next. But I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'll talk to you in the next video.
Can't believe the bullshit that went down in the Dark Zone at the end there.
I know. We had it. Everything I told them was dead on. They made us pull out anyway.
And we left our dead behind.
Yeah, we're not supposed to do that. Hang on a second.